You are the biggest threat to this company." Jeffrey Stone slammed his fist on the conference table, sending water glasses trembling. 40 colleagues froze in their seats as our chief executive officer's voice boomed across the quarterly review meeting. His finger jabbed the air between us like a weapon. "Your department is hemorrhaging money. Your leadership is non-existent, and frankly, your continued employment is dragging us all down." The projector hummed in the silence. My presentation, 3 months of market analysis, still displayed on the screen behind Jeffrey. My throat closed as I registered what was happening. "These projections are fantasy," he continued. "The board expects results, not excuses packaged as innovation." Sweat pricked my hairline. Jeffrey paced, now growing more animated with each accusation. 2 years you have been pushing these fresh approaches. 2 years of declining numbers. The pattern is clear to everyone but you." My colleagues studied their notepads with sudden fascination. Brenda Cole from marketing scooted her chair back. "Perhaps," Jeffrey smiled thinly, "you have been promoted beyond your capabilities." I opened my mouth to defend myself when the heavy oak door swung open. Conversation died instantly as Nolan Brooks, chairman of the board, surveyed the room. His silver-streaked hair and measured movements commanded attention without effort. Nolan's eyes met mine briefly before he strode directly to Jeffrey. He placed a hand on the chief executive officer's shoulder, leaning to whisper something barely audible. "Is that confirmed?" Jeffrey asked, his voice suddenly stripped of its confidence. Nolan nodded once. I watched the color drain from Jeffrey's face as he glanced back at me, really seeing me for the first time, not as an obstacle to remove, but as someone who knew exactly who he was. "My name is Howard Vance, and until that morning, I was the director of strategic development at a company I once believed in. I was 51 years old, a man who preferred quiet diligence over corporate posturing. My grandmother, Evelyn Vance, raised me on the principle that integrity costs nothing but pays the highest dividends. I believed that. What most people missed was the methodical mind that had earned me top honors and 3 promotions in 4 years. My ability to see patterns was disciplined observation. Jeffrey miscalculated when he assumed quietness indicated weakness. 6 months before that meeting, I noticed something troubling. Every strategy I proposed met resistance. Projects that had received preliminary approval were mysteriously defunded. "The market is shifting," Jeffrey would explain. "We need to focus on established methods." Each time I presented data supporting my approaches, Jeffrey would nod politely, then redirect the conversation. Decisions were made that contradicted what we had discussed. My direct appeals were met with patronizing assurances. Meanwhile, Jeffrey brought in special advisors, men with outdated ideas who collected substantial consultation fees while contributing little beyond reinforcing Jeffrey's position. The company culture shifted gradually. Innovative thinking became synonymous with risk. Fear replaced creativity. My team members began requesting transfers. "It is nothing personal," Owen Kelly told me as he cleared out his desk. "But I can see which way the wind is blowing." I stayed late that night, reviewing the pattern forming before me. Our competitors were evolving while we retreated into outdated practices. Jeffrey had built his reputation on being forward-thinking, yet now championed approaches he had previously criticized. My search for answers led me to the quarterly finance reports, not the polished presentations for leadership, but the raw data. I spent weekends analyzing numbers, tracing money flows, comparing projections against outcomes. That is when I found it. Subtle discrepancies between approved budgets and actual expenditures. Together they formed a disturbing pattern. Significant sums were diverted through the special advisor program Jeffrey had established. I needed more information before taking action. Direct confrontation would be career suicide without irrefutable evidence. So, I documented everything meticulously, creating backup copies stored securely off-site. As I dug deeper, another puzzle piece emerged. The company had rejected an acquisition of a promising startup last year, a decision that baffled the strategy team. 3 months later, that same startup was acquired by a holding company. I traced the ownership structure through public records and discovered connections to Jeffrey's former college roommate. The morning before the quarterly review meeting, I received an anonymous email. "Check the advisor payment structure against the Cayman registry." It read. Following that thread revealed offshore accounts linked to shell companies with familiar naming patterns. Jeffrey was systematically undermining the company while enriching himself and his network. I arrived at the quarterly review meeting with my standard presentation plus a sealed envelope containing my findings. My plan was to share my market analysis publicly, then request a private meeting with Nolan to hand over the envelope. I never got the chance. Jeffrey's ambush shifted everything. Now, as Nolan guided Jeffrey toward the exit for a private word, the room erupted in confused murmurs. My colleagues' expressions ranged from sympathy to calculation. Brenda approached first. "That was totally unprofessional of Jeffrey," she whispered, her concern transparently self-serving. "Yesterday she had declined my lunch invitation, claiming deadlines. If there is anything I can do, let me know." Nolan returned alone minutes later. "The meeting is adjourned," he announced. "Howard, a word in my office, please." The walk through silent corridors felt eternal. Each step echoed with uncertainty. Had Nolan discovered what I had, or was this simply the formal separation process after Jeffrey's public condemnation? Nolan's office door closed behind us with a soft click that somehow sounded final. "Please sit," he said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. His expression revealed nothing. "Before we begin," I said, placing the sealed envelope on his desk, "you should see this." Nolan Brooks studied the envelope without opening it immediately. "I suspect I know what is in here," he said, his eyes meeting mine with unexpected warmth. "But first, tell me why you did not come to me sooner." The question caught me off guard. There were no accusations or immediate dismissals, just genuine curiosity. "Honestly, I was not sure who I could trust," I replied, straightening my shoulders. The pattern of financial diversion was so systematic. I could not tell how far it reached. I did not want to alert the wrong person and watch the evidence disappear. Nolan nodded slowly. "Reasonable caution," he murmured. He tapped the envelope. "May I?" I nodded. As Nolan pulled out the documents and reviewed my evidence, his expression darkened. 20 minutes passed in absolute silence, broken only by the occasional rustle of paper. Finally, he closed the folder and slid it back into the envelope. "Your analysis is exceptionally thorough, Howard," he said, his voice measured. "But there is more here that you have not uncovered yet." My heart pounded against my ribs. "More? Jeffrey's network extends beyond what you have documented in these files," Nolan explained, leaning forward. "The board has been building its own case for months. What puzzles me is why he targeted you so publicly today. It was uncharacteristically reckless of him." "I received an anonymous tip yesterday," I admitted. "Perhaps he discovered I was investigating and wanted to discredit me before I could speak." "That would explain it," Nolan said, rising and walking to the window. "Jeffrey must have realized his safety net was unraveling. Creating a public narrative about your incompetence was likely a preemptive strike, a way to ensure that any accusations you made would look like the desperate actions of a failing employee." "What happens now?" I asked, my fingers gripping the armrests of my chair. "Officially, nothing yet." Nolan turned back to face me. "The board requires irrefutable evidence of direct theft before confronting him. If we move too early, he will use his offshore entities to lock us in litigation for years. Unofficially, I need someone I can trust on the inside of his operation, someone who can watch the transactions unfold in real time." "You want me to watch the chief executive officer?" I asked, the words feeling surreal as they left my mouth. "I want you to continue doing exactly what you have been doing, observing the patterns others miss." Nolan's face remained impassive. "Can you handle increased scrutiny from Jeffrey while maintaining your investigation?" The question was not whether I could, but whether I should. The safer choice was walking away, taking a severance package, and finding another job. Yet, a stubborn refusal to let Jeffrey destroy the firm I had spent years building pulled at me. "Yes," I said simply, "I can handle it." "Good. From this moment you will report directly to me, though publicly nothing changes." Nolan slid my envelope into his desk drawer. "Jeffrey will intensify his efforts against you after today's interruption. Be prepared." Nolan's prediction proved painfully accurate. By Monday morning, my entire team had been reassigned to different departments. My spacious office was now occupied by one of Jeffrey's special advisors, while my personal belongings had been relocated to a windowless supply closet. It was a cramped box with barely enough room for a desk and a chair. The air in the closet was warm and stale, smelling of old cardboard and cleaning chemicals, and the constant hum of a ventilation shaft nearby made concentration nearly impossible. It was a physical manifestation of my corporate demotion, a daily reminder that I was being systematically erased. Space reallocation, a human resources representative, explained when I questioned the sudden move. It is part of our strategic departmental restructuring. My access to the financial databases was revoked under the guise of security protocol updates. Meeting invitations dwindled, then stopped entirely. My emails received delayed responses or none at all. Whispers followed me through the hallways, and former colleagues averted their eyes when I approached. Lunch invitations evaporated. The isolation was calculated, designed to make me resign. Jeffrey himself adopted a strategy of complete dismissal, looking right through me in the hallways as if I were invisible. 2 weeks into this silent war, Donald Gable from accounting approached me in the break room. At 57 years old, Donald had survived 3 corporate restructurings and countless leadership changes. His perpetually rumpled appearance belied a razor-sharp mind. "Nasty business, that quarterly review," Donald murmured, ostensibly focused on selecting a tea bag. "Don't take it personally. Jeffrey does this periodically. He creates scapegoats to distract from underperformance. Thanks for the perspective," I replied carefully. Donald glanced around the empty room before continuing. "I heard you lost database access. Shame about those legacy systems requiring dual authorization protocols. They have a backdoor access point that was designed for system maintenance." He shuffled away before I could respond, leaving a small sticky note pressed into my palm. That night, I discovered the credentials on the note granted temporary access to the restricted financial archives. For 3 hours, I sat in my darkened office, documenting everything I could find. I copied payment authorizations, fund transfers, and consultant agreements. The picture grew clearer with each discovery. Jeffrey was siphoning intellectual property to his shell company, Centurion Holdings, preparing to gut our future. I encrypted my findings and sent them through the secure channel Nolan had established. Days passed without a response. Doubt crept in. What if Nolan was part of the scheme? What if I had been manipulated? The annual strategy summit approached, which consisted of 3 days at a mountain retreat with the entire leadership team. My invitation never arrived. Administrative oversight, Jeffrey's assistant Sylvia Reed explained when I inquired. "We assumed you knew your attendance was not required this year." The exclusion stung, but it proved to be a fortunate turn of events. While the leadership team was away at the summit, I received an unexpected visitor. A courier appeared at my small closet office holding an overnight package, signature required. Inside the package was a company tablet I had never seen before, activated and loaded with proprietary software. A sticky note attached to the screen read simply, "Review before tomorrow's board meeting." The tablet contained hundreds of files. There were merger proposals, target acquisitions, and restructuring plans, all bearing Jeffrey's digital signature and all dated within the past month. Every single document contradicted the strategic direction he had publicly championed. Among them were detailed plans to dismantle my former department entirely, spinning our core projects into a new company where Jeffrey would hold a significant equity stake. As I scrolled through document after document, a calendar notification popped up on the screen. "Board emergency session, 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, your attendance required." Minutes later, my personal phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Be prepared. Bring everything." The boardroom felt cavernous the next morning, with only 7 people present. Nolan Brooks sat at the head of the conference table. Beside him were 4 board members I recognized only from annual reports, plus a woman I had never seen before, whose tailored suit and watchful eyes signaled that she was legal counsel. "Howard," Nolan nodded as I entered. "Thank you for joining us." "I was not aware I had a choice," I replied, taking the only empty seat at the table. "Everyone always has choices," the unknown woman said, her voice sharp and professional. "I am Eleanor Thorne, outside counsel retained by the board." Nolan cleared his throat. "Jeffrey has been delayed returning from the summit. Weather issues with his flight. Most convenient timing. Something in his tone suggested the delay was not entirely accidental. This gives us approximately 3 hours. 3 hours for what exactly, I asked. To decide the company's future, the oldest board member replied. His silver hair and weathered face gave him a distinguished appearance. I am Gerald Fletcher, by the way. We have never properly met, though I have followed your strategic work with great interest, Nolan continued. We have substantial evidence of financial misconduct involving Jeffrey and his appointed advisors. What we lack is a clear picture of how deep the corruption extends within the organization. Which is where you come in, Eleanor Thorne added. Your documentation provides the operational context we have been missing. For the next hour, I walked the board members through everything I had discovered. I opened my laptop and projected the forensic accounting spreadsheets, showing how funds were systematically routed away from research and development and into offshore shell entities. I detailed the diverted funds, the sabotaged innovations, and the systematic dismantling of our forward-thinking initiatives. The boardroom was dead silent except for the hum of the projector. Gerald Fletcher, sitting straight in his chair, interrupted periodically with incisive questions about our proprietary databases and intellectual property transfers. His questions revealed that he and Nolan had been tracking these anomalies, but lacked the operational access to prove Jeffrey's direct hand in the siphoning. I explained how Jeffrey's maneuvers were not just bad business, but clear violations of federal law. By siphoning our proprietary software and transferring client databases to Centurion Holdings, Jeffrey was committing willful infringement under Title 17 of the United States Code, Section 106, which governs exclusive rights in copyrighted works, and Title 35 of the United States Code, Section 271, which covers patent infringement. Furthermore, I pointed out the restructuring documents on the tablet. Jeffrey planned to lay off over 80 employees immediately without the statutory notice. This was a flagrant violation of the Federal Worker Adjustment and Retraining Notification Act, codified under Title 29 of the United States Code, Section 2101. Such a violation would expose the company to immense liability, including back pay and civil penalties for every single day of violation. We would be facing class action lawsuits, federal audits, and severe reputational damage that could destroy our stock value overnight. The other board members remained largely silent, their expressions serious as they absorbed the legal ramifications. What remains unclear, Nolan said when I finished, is Jeffrey's endgame. These maneuvers have damaged the company's market position, yet he continues drawing his substantial salary and bonuses. Because he is not finished yet, I realized aloud, as the pieces fell into place. Everything points to a managed decline. He is positioning the firm for a hostile takeover. Explain, Eleanor Thorne demanded, leaning forward. I pulled up the acquisition documents from the tablet. These target companies create a very specific footprint in the market. Combined with our intellectual property and client relationships, which he has been quietly transferring through his advisor network, they form a complete ecosystem that can replace us. He is driving our valuation down to make the acquisition cheaper for his shell company, Centurion Holdings. Clever and utterly ruthless, Gerald Fletcher whispered. His eyes widening as he looked at the numbers. Nolan's phone buzzed. His expression tightened as he read the screen. Jeffrey has landed, he announced, looking around the table. He will be here within the hour. We need to make a decision now. The youngest board member leaned forward, his brow furrowed. The evidence is compelling, but circumstantial. Moving against the chief executive officer without absolute proof could destabilize the company further. Waiting guarantees we lose everything, Gerald Fletcher countered, his voice firm. There is another option, Eleanor Thorne suggested, her sharp eyes finding mine. We can run a controlled operation to secure irrefutable, direct evidence of his misconduct. Nolan Brooks nodded slowly. You are suggesting we use Howard as bait. Not bait, Eleanor corrected. A strategic asset. Jeffrey already views you as a threat. We leverage that perception. How exactly? I asked, feeling a cold knot form in my stomach. By giving him exactly what he wants, a chance to destroy you completely, Eleanor explained, her tone completely professional. The plan was straightforward. I would confront Jeffrey privately in his office, pretending to have only partial evidence, and record the entire conversation. His reaction, whether it was threats, denial, or an attempt to bribe me, would provide the definitive proof the board needed to enact immediate termination. It is asking a lot, Nolan acknowledged. Perhaps too much. It is asking me to risk my career and reputation on the gamble that Jeffrey will incriminate himself, I clarified. And I would be trusting that all of you will protect me if things go wrong. Yes, Gerald Fletcher admitted. That is precisely what we are asking. I studied their faces, searching for any sign of deception. What I found instead was desperation. These powerful people were genuinely afraid of what Jeffrey had set in motion. I will need guaranteed protection regardless of the outcome, I stated. Written and signed before we proceed. Eleanor Thorne smiled. Already drafted, she said, sliding a document across the table. The board anticipated your conditions. As I reviewed the agreement, my phone buzzed with a message from Jeffrey's assistant. Chief Executive Officer requests your immediate presence in office upon his return. Urgent matter. Regarding your continued employment. I showed the text to Nolan. Seems Jeffrey has plans of his own. Perfect timing, Eleanor said. This is our opportunity. I signed the protection agreement, feeling the weight of the moment. Nolan handed me a tiny recording device disguised as a lapel pin. Let him believe he is winning, he advised. As I stood to leave, Gerald Fletcher gripped my arm gently. Be careful, Howard. Men like Jeffrey do not appreciate being cornered. I nodded, my heart hammering against my ribs. The hallway stretched before me like a gauntlet. As I made my way toward the executive suite, Jeffrey's assistant, Sylvia Reed, stood up as I approached. Her normally composed expression tinged with unease. He is waiting for you, she whispered, eyes darting toward the closed door. He has been unsettled since returning from the summit. Thanks for the heads up, I replied. Adjusting my lapel pin, Jeffrey's office was ostentatious. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the city skyline. Awards and photographs with influential figures lined the walls. He did not look up when I entered, making a show of reviewing documents. The power play was transparent. Make me wait to establish dominance. I remained standing, refusing to sit without an invitation. After a full minute of silence, he finally raised his head. Interesting development, Jeffrey said, his voice carrying the practiced calm of someone hiding intense anger. Security flagged unusual database access from your credentials during off hours. My pulse quickened. Donald Gable's access codes had been traced. Nothing unusual about reviewing company financial records as part of my job, I replied. Former job, Jeffrey corrected, smiling thinly. Your position has been eliminated, effective immediately. On what grounds? I kept my voice steady. Poor performance, departmental restructuring, budget constraints. He waved his hand dismissively. Take your pick. The paperwork allows for multiple justifications. Convenient timing, I noted. Considering the quarterly projections are due next week. Projections that will show the impact of your special advisor program on our bottom line. Jeffrey's eyes narrowed, the first crack in his composure. Careful, Howard. Unfounded accusations against executive leadership could constitute grounds for legal action. There is nothing unfounded about documented financial transfers, I countered, watching him closely. Or the interesting overlap between company resources and your personal investments. Jeffrey's chair scraped against the floor as he stood. You have been under considerable stress lately. Perhaps it is affecting your judgment. My judgment is perfectly clear, I said. As is the pattern of financial irregularities connected to your special advisors. Jeffrey walked to the window, keeping his back to me. We have spent years building this enterprise, Howard. I will not have my reputation tarnished by a disgruntled employee who cannot keep up with modern strategic shifts. The only shift happening here is the siphoning of our intellectual property, I replied, standing my ground. You are redirecting resources to entities you control, and you are doing it at the expense of our shareholders and employees. Jeffrey Stone walked to his desk. Let us be practical, Howard, he said, his voice softening. Career transitions are challenging. Your talents are wasted in a rigid corporate structure. Are you offering me a job at a shell company? I asked, unable to keep the incredulity from my voice. I am offering you a consulting opportunity, Jeffrey replied, removing a folder from his drawer. Generous compensation, flexible terms. He slid the folder across the desk. Inside was a contract offering 5 times my current salary for strategic consulting through an offshore entity. This is a bribe, I stated flatly. This is business, he countered smoothly. You have insights I value. I am willing to compensate you accordingly. And if you decline, you leave with nothing but a termination for cause on your record. Your choice. I picked up the contract, pretending to consider it while ensuring the lapel pin captured the rustle. What exactly would these consulting services entail? Discretion primarily, Jeffrey said. Your analytical skills applied to projects I designate, nothing illegal. I pressed, nothing prosecutable, he clarified with chilling precision. Risk management is my specialty. I set the contract down. And if I were to share what I know about your risk management with others, then I would be forced to demonstrate how thoroughly I have managed my risks. Including the risk of troublesome employees, Jeffrey warned. You have until tomorrow morning to accept. I will need time to review the terms, I said, standing up. Due diligence is important, Jeffrey smiled, believing he had won. I left his office, taking the elevator to the parking garage to process the interaction. As I walked toward my car, Donald Gable stepped out from between 2 vehicles. Rough meeting, Donald asked. You could say that, I replied. Figured as much, Donald said, dropping his voice. Security is asking about unusual database access. They will trace the codes back to me soon. To both of us, I corrected. Why are you telling me this? Because Jeffrey did this to my predecessor, forced him out and blamed him for discrepancies. The pattern repeats because no one stops it, Donald said. I recorded everything, I admitted, pointing to my lapel pin. The board is waiting. Relief washed over Donald's face. Good. Headlights swept the garage as a company sport utility vehicle approached. The door opened and Nolan Brooks stepped out. There you are, Nolan said, tension evident in his voice. Jeffrey has called an emergency meeting, moving his timelines forward. What does that mean? I asked. He is initiating his contingency plans, Nolan replied. We need to move now. Donald cleared his throat. Howard has recording evidence. Jeffrey tried bribing him. Nolan looked at Donald. William Donald Gable, correct? You have been here 17 years and are apparently aware of our investigation. I notice patterns too, Donald shrugged. Joining us, Nolan directed. Both of you. The executive floor was in chaos when we returned. Eleanor Thorne connected my lapel pin to a laptop. The room fell silent as Jeffrey's threats played clearly. Perfect, Eleanor said. This, combined with the financial documentation, gives us everything we need for immediate termination, Nolan addressed the room. We have 30 minutes until the board convenes formally. A security officer approached Nolan. Mr. Brooks, Jeffrey is requesting database access archives. He is deleting evidence, Donald said immediately. Can we deny the request? Eleanor asked. Not without tipping our hand, Nolan replied. I can lock down the critical sections, Donald interjected. Legacy systems require dual authentication. I can block his override under the guise of system maintenance. Do it, Nolan approved. Jeffrey's assistant, Sylvia Reed, appeared at the doorway. Mr. Brooks, Mr. Stone requests your presence at his meeting immediately. Nolan turned to me. If I attend his meeting, I cannot chair the board vote. We need a unanimous vote to enact immediate termination. I can distract him, I volunteered. I will go to his office and pretend I want to negotiate the bribe. I will keep him occupied while the board votes. It is too risky, Nolan shook his head. He is expecting my answer, I argued. He will be suspicious if I do not respond, Eleanor agreed. Keeping Jeffrey occupied is advantageous. I returned to Jeffrey's office pretending to negotiate. I raised objections about the contract's liability clauses, forcing him into circles. We spoke for 20 minutes. Jeffrey's phone buzzed repeatedly, but he ignored it, focused on securing my signature. Finally, his office phone lit up. Sylvia Reed's voice came through the intercom. Sir, security is requesting access to your office. They say it is urgent. Tell them to wait, Jeffrey ordered. We cannot, sir, Sylvia replied. They have board authorization. The door opened. Nolan entered, flanked by security and Eleanor Thorne. Jeffrey Stone, Nolan began. By unanimous vote of the board of directors, your employment is terminated effective immediately for financial malfeasance and breach of fiduciary duty. Jeffrey stood slowly, his face contorted with rage. This is absurd. You have no authority. We have a recorded attempt to bribe Howard into silence, Eleanor countered, handing him the paperwork. Jeffrey glared at me, his eyes burning with hatred. You recorded our conversation. Risk management, I replied calmly. Security escorted Jeffrey from the building. Watching him walk away, stripped of power, I felt a deep sense of relief. Nolan turned to me. The board has appointed an interim chief executive officer, Howard. The vote was unanimous. You see the patterns others miss, Nolan smiled. 3 months later, our company held its first quarterly review under my leadership. Jeffrey faced criminal charges, and the culture was healing. Projections showed our first growth increase in 2 years. Standing in the boardroom, I realized my true revenge was not taking Jeffrey's title, but restoring the integrity of the company we had built.